sincere, benevolent, decent beings that ends up stumbling across this video here at Blooming Truth. The truth about CES, the truth about CES and all CES and other systems that work with them, other entities, other organizations that work with them. I'm going to tell what has happened to me and my son, but this is also something that is commonly done to any targeted population. But before I get into that discussion, I want to talk about what the person said to me that encouraged me to go to that shelter system, that coordinated entry system access point in Compton, California. They told me that they were having conversations with the mayor about the homeless population, how, you know, these people have a lot of mental health issues, mental health conditions, that is kind of playing a role in their homelessness. Recently, as I was reaching out to resources, I had spoke with someone, another clerk, and I don't think they meant any harm, but they mentioned something similar. They said, no one wants to really be out there. There's got to be some kind of a mental health issue as to why they're out there. My comment to her, I said, well, yes and no. Life happens. But this is what I want to talk about in terms of the coordinated entry system that deals with the displaced community. Disclaimer, the displaced community is a mixed bag. Of course, you're going to have people out there that are strung out on drugs, gang members, prostitutes, with certain diagnoses, schizophrenias, and of course that's in there, but what we don't know is what's really behind that condition in the first place. Now that's something that these systems are assuming to have knowledge about. And then they equate these people seeming to not be stabilized to do with the condition, but what came first, the chicken or the egg? So now I want to talk about what happened to me and my son in terms of the sabotage that these people play a role in when certain individuals are attempting to do all of the things to stabilize. A part of being displaced and homeless is the fact that everything that allows one to be stable has somehow fallen through the cracks, whether that is not an ability to get a job or keep a job, a business, an income, or to pay the bills, or the resources to handle life's affairs usually. So these programs are funded by the government. Many of them are 501c programs, and they're given all these allotments to keep these organizations running. And in their program, they are, parading about as entities that's partnering with this company and that company and, holistically attempting to assist the population. Whether that is, they love spitting this one out. Documentation. If the person needs to get their birth certificate, driver's license, social security card, if they need help applying for if they need help applying for housing, if they need help applying for something, if they need help building a resume. And another thing that they love to do, if they need help, mental health services, they're going to have a group session or provide that. Now, that sounds good on paper and in theory, and in some cases they have their, I'm going to call their tokens, their so-called victory and success stories. They have their tokens that they parade around that was possibly kissing their ass, licking their bootstraps and ass cracks, somebody who was easily manipulated, easily in control, didn't ask any questions, just did what they were told. Okay. And if they like them, they might, after having them jump through a few fire hoops and loops, they might give them access to some of the things to be their frontman, their token. Look, we have this success story. We got this person placed in housing. We got them and stabilized. We assisted them with this whole process, and they got to their appointments, and we helped their children, and so forth. Now, this is what happened to me. First and foremost, I went to Compton under false pretense. I was lied to. Okay? Let's just start with that. I was lied to. I wouldn't have chosen to go there otherwise. Okay? I was looking for a system and a program that was going to be suitable for me and my son under our circumstances and based on what I was looking for. And if it wasn't available, I had no intention on going somewhere that I hadn't been since I was a little girl, that's virtually still underdeveloped, and that's what it is. Okay? I wouldn't have done that. I would have risked my chances in a place that was broader and possibly had more access and possibilities if it was going to come down to essentially we're stuck in the shelter and essentially it's up to us to work out the deal, even though all these programs promise so much support. So needless to say, I went, and that was the trap. Now, they started passive aggressively sabotaging by being non-responsive. And I do have the proof of that. What else do you call it? From the very beginning, I would go above and beyond to communicate to no avail. They would appease me and never follow through with anything. My son got hurt. He got hurt in the shower. I put in several requests for things that was going on there. Nothing ever got done. Everybody always needed to talk to someone else. We had workers there that decided to go play by their own rules. We got things stolen from us there. We were stalked and harassed. I've got proof. By some of the residents of that particular location, as well as staff. But they did this in a passive, aggressive, plausible deniability way. Now let's get to the facts. That's a fact as well, but I'm going to get to more tangible ones that's very easy to put together. I did all the things under the circumstance. My son is an adult disabled. Even though he can stay alone, that particular location required that I didn't leave the property without him. Under the circumstances of things that were being done, that made things a whole lot more difficult than they needed to be. So I worked with the system as long as I could. I gave them their first shot. And when they were showing me, at least on some level, that, well, we had transportation. So I figured, okay, if they're going to bill our insurance and we've got transportation to do the things we need to do, very well. At least we have transportation. I don't have to subject my son to further traumatic experiences, provoking a possible heart attack, and God knows what else, because the fact of the matter is the things that have been going on are going on. So I worked with that, and they did that for almost 2.5 out of the 3 months, 2.5, close to 3 months, without a problem. Transportation was provided. I would reach out to the case manager through the organization that came there, which I now know who they are and who they're connected to. That came there for the medical side of things, and then they provide case management assistance. So It was you request rides, and through that, it was a lot of shenanigans with that too. Sometimes they would not be available and be in meetings and have me and my son stuck in skid row environments for hours, and you know. But prior to that, everything's smooth sailing. Okay, in terms of reach out, let them know what has to be done. They would schedule it and they would get us there. Okay, so that was allowing me to do the things that I'm going the long way, because I have to prove, I have to speak and prove the point, the errors in the system, and people who are presuming to know why people are homeless and trying to imply that upon folks like myself, the reason they believe it's so. Okay. Or in some cases, they know it's not so, it's a cover up. So I was able to, get to doctor's appointments. If I was trying to find other housing options, I was able to utilize that. If I was trying to go wash clothing, because they didn't have laundry facilities for us to wash. I understand that a lot of people in these places got friends and family and vehicles and stuff like that. Well, that wasn't my case, and every person involved with the situation knew that that wasn't my case from the beginning. And for a while, they would provide the transportation so that I could go to the laundromat once a week to keep our clothes clean. In terms of becoming my son's IHSS worker, attending the orientations and all of that. Well, initially they provided, but then when it was time for me to complete further paperwork and submit those final things and stuff, that's when they pulled the rug, and all of a sudden they were no longer covering this transportation. Now, they didn't give me no heads up. They didn't communicate. They basically sabotaged. I told their workers that my son had a class. I had finally got him set up with the regional center, even though they're involved, at least that location for sure. I got him set up with regional center, and we were getting things. This is what they have been typically doing to me. And this is what they do to a lot of the homeless population that seem on the surface like they can't seem to get it together. Like they're always running, or they're always leaving, or they're always unstable. And I'm giving you why in some cases. I attempted to connect to them about my son's class. No one responded to me in 3 days. That was sabotage. And when they did respond, that's when all of a sudden the rules changed. This is what the system does. They didn't apologize. Let me make this perfectly clear. They didn't acknowledge the fact that they had not communicated, the fact that they had not responded. They didn't apologize. They didn't take into account my son, his condition and his nervous system. They didn't take into account me. They didn't even acknowledge any of that. Okay. Then I attempted to communicate. I was told by the case manager of the location at the very beginning of the month of June, based on several attempts that I had submitted, telling them the entire story and all the conditions and things, including with a doctor's note from my son's then psychiatrist. And every request was met with, they can't do that, they don't do that, and then eventually, well, we can relocate you to a new location that we have to open up by the end of June, before July. I attempted to follow up one time just to see. I kind of already knew. And then I was told, oh, well, first they have to move the families that are in the location that's shutting down, move them there first, and then they'll get back with you, get back with me. So I'm going to say this again. You don't have to be the sharpest pencil in a pencil box to figure out that that's something that they have figured out even prior to moving the families. Because to move the families, you have to know how many families are at the location that you're moving, and so that you can put them all in the rooms that you have available. So that's knowledge that they have. Now, in terms of the movement and activity, that's different, but it's still the knowledge that they already have. And why wasn't I a priority when it's something I had looked into 2 months prior? My son hurting his foot, my son's condition. The fact that we are being systematically, illegally harassed and surveilled. The fact that I have obsessed, estranged relatives and people that I've grown up with, partnering to do things. I know that sometimes those things are hard for people to believe, but the point that I'm making is, even if you were to take those aspects that's hard to swallow, it was sabotage. These systems are supposed to be they're supposed to be pro-family, wanting to see someone make it. When I realized that they had pulled the transportation rug, even how unprofessional that was done, I then attempted to connect with case management to see, okay, well, they knew I had limited funds, limited resources, limited mobilities and all of that. So I'm like, okay, let's see, let's reroute. Can you all fax? I have some important mail over at the location that they allow you to get mail. Okay, again, I wouldn't have chosen this. Everyone's situation is different. So I wouldn't have chosen it. I was working with it and doing what I could with it because it had somewhat hope in that I might be able to work with this and get myself out of here, as we have these resources here to utilize and work the program in the best way suitable for me. And this is what I was told. First and foremost, I didn't get a response from the case manager. I'm going to continue to talk about how unprofessional. One day is one thing, 3 and 4 days, and then they see you and they act like they didn't get a message from you. That's unprofessional. The excuse that people have a caseload, that's also unprofessional. That's displacement of responsibility. It's their jobs. And they chose it. So they didn't respond. Okay. I went over to the front office to ask to see, because it's a business and most businesses have an office function. So I'm like, can you fax this over? It was a form so that I can have what? A job. What do they always advocate and have all these monthly meetings about and have all these people coming out to do these monthly meetings? Employment services, opportunities, all these things. And the simple task of faxing something is not like asking them for $700. I went over and the case manager One of the case managers said, directed me to the library. The woman said, "Oh, we don't do that. We only can fax like inner office stuff." He said library. I went to the library, and guess what? Library don't do that. But here's where I'm going. This is sabotage. If they really wanted and cared about the health and the well-being of me and my son and wanted to see us stabilized and make it, they would have been definitely more useful and more helpful and more professional. And more sensitive to him and his condition, which means they would have tended to that. Let's get him from right there. He's got a doctor's note. His mother has explained this. This should be a priority. I attempted to go to a room that's on the other side of where we were, where it was less activity, where he would be less activated. And I requested this before it was filled, and it couldn't be done. I daily saw other rooms being tended to, worked on, while our bed was broke. Had pictures of that. The plumbing was constantly leaking. Had pictures of that, videos of that. The case management would come in constantly. Let me rephrase that. I'm not going to say constantly. I'm going to say they would come, wellness check, even after seeing us. So it's like, is that really a wellness check? You know, this is all within their program, though. They're good at doing that. And then to see, you know, if your room is messy, so that they can take pictures of your room being messy when they come unannounced. Guarantee if I show up at some of their houses unsuspecting. Why am I explaining or saying all of this? Because this is what people look at on the outside could be the fruit in terms of other people of dealing with a system that is corrupt, or a system that is operating like this while people trying to rebuild their lives. I believe this is in part to do with some hate crime. Everybody's situation may not be that involved, where it's like you have, you know, religious hate crimes. Because people are committing hate crimes. They don't like you. They use their positions to do abuse. So after having realized that these people were like playing a role in trying to hurt me and my son, and for some of them just simply sabotaging us, paid to delay, sabotage, you know, all of those things, then it became, we have somewhere to lay our head, that where we're being abused at, which is something I was working through in terms of the other stuff that some of y'all aren't ready to accept as truth and a reality. But I was working through that stuff. I was picking up tools to be able to work through some of that. But, you know, beyond that, I realized, like, well, we're stuck. And that's what they wanted. It was a catch-22 once again. And the difference between the two situations is I fled Texas in a different energy. This one was about, okay, the resources, they're no longer assisting. It's no longer serving. There's stagnation. There's active activity against it, and the surveillance, all that came with the suppression of what shelter systems actually are, what they really are. Somebody's going to say it's something, and it was something for 3 months. But in that 3 months, I realized they had no intention on really helping me and my son. People giving us a list of 211 resources, a list of places that you can get on a housing waiting list, You know, those things are things you can do on your own, separate from a shelter system. That is not the conditions that I agreed to. That's not why. That's not the premise that I went there. I was told they can help you get your own apartment, your own spot. That was just going to be essentially something temporary while they can get you in your next placement. Not that they're just going to help you fill out some paperwork or some kind of lottery computer shuffleboard unit. Okay, that's not what I was told. And as I attempted to increase my income to make us maybe more, ready, to get an apartment, even outside of the income-based stuff, since they sabotaged that really let me know the way they did that, and how they only reach out to me when they want to talk to me, when they need an answer, when they're trying to cover their asses. I shouldn't have had to chase people. These people are paid to do these jobs. Religious agendas had no business being involved. Political agendas had no business being involved. People's personal issues with me and who I am and what I do had no business being involved. People's connections to my past had no business being involved. And it was, and it is. And it's something that's common, more common than people know. But back to the topic. When someone is trying to rebuild their lives under these types of conditions, they're displaced, they're in a shelter system where they don't have any true real privacy, not entirely. The whole system is under constant surveillance. They have to talk and deal with people that maybe they wouldn't otherwise want to talk to and deal with. You have dealing with people playing games, playing in their faces, while smiling at their children, acting like they're decent. An already complicated situation, and then the people that's supposed to be there, that's supposed to be some of their greatest cheerleaders, that's supposed to be folks that want to see them excel, even if it's excelling on their terms and not theirs, on the client's terms and not their terms, wanting to see people happy, healthy, all of that good bullshit talk that they talk in all their meetings and their grant proposals. This could create now, because see, I'm going to put this as the topic that needs to be on the table of the politicians. That creates mental health niggles for people that are already dealing with heavy weights and burdens and baggage that some of these people aren't even qualified to speak on. They're speaking from assumption, presumption, and some dry ass education. And when I say dry, because that's all that it is. Sat behind a desk, computer screen, they gave them a certificate. Mental health niggles, when you have abusers abusing power, is what has created a lot of the mental health niggles that they see in the homeless population. And I said many, because I understand that it's not all. Some people become that because they have dealt with systemic abuse. Because in some cases, that's actually the goal. They're attempting to separate families. They're attempting to make mothers and fathers seem ill-fitting by having the so-called workers be unavailable, pretend meetings, pretend sick, pretend dead, pretend, didn't get it, all the other plausible deniability BS statements. Bait and switch, swappy, switchy, roo. Oh, we don't have that anymore. That's a classic excuse. Funding has been cut. That's a classic excuse too. That has nothing to do with professionalism. It has nothing to do with finessing in a positive way when you're trying to compensate for the fact that, hey, we have a service that we provide. Today, I called, well, actually before that, I called a location to see if they had resources that could assist with me and my son in our situation without necessarily going shelter route. Okay. I made it clear, again, the communication. And guess what? This is why I say the system is creating the mental health needles that they see on Skid Row and on the sides of these streets in these different cities. And I want to say 80 to 90%. Bullshitting people, giving people the runaround when people are already under. That's not how you do no human service business. That's not how you conduct any so-called philanthropic establishment. You be straight with folks. You don't waste their time. You don't talk in circles and gaslighting to get them down there to talk to you so that you can get a number and check off something on your list. While you wasted their time and they could have been doing something else, finding something more suitable for them. You tell them, hey, you give them to them straight. The A's, A through Z. First, you have to go do this, this, and this before you can even get to this and that, and then leave it up to them. Then they make the decision if they want to do it or if they don't. Clear communication, open, honest communication. A shuttle took us somewhere. We got to the meeting location. The shuttle took us there. How are you going to be a shuttle and you don't provide it back? This is the part that I laugh at, because I'm like, I laugh. I laugh. The not giving clear answers, that's a problem. That in itself can create mental health for people that are already dealing with stressful situations. You know whether or not your program has housing, yes or no. You know if you guys got availability or not. Yup, you know it. Okay. You may not know if that person is going to qualify or get it per se, but the program in itself knows whether or not that is something that is relatively or readily available. And they also know if there's like a waiting list. So that way people who have more immediate needs can be rerouted to something different. Because them spending hours, if they're on a deadline, them spending hours talking to you, filling out paperwork, sitting on shuttles, this is by design in a lot of cases. It sounds like a conspiracy theory. Whether you want to believe it's a conspiracy or not, if you look at it just from flat, a matter-of-fact lens, you'll still see that there's something wrong. A lot of these people don't have transportation. They don't have money just to, and depending on their situation, if they have children, I mean, that's a whole added something. Now, a single man, I have a different feeling about that. It's like, okay, you a man, okay, you by yourself, okay. It's tough. I'm not going to take away the fact that it's still tough, but it's like, okay, dude. And it's tough and it's bad and it's horrible, but you're a man, you ain't got no baby on your hip, you don't got no child on your hip relying on you, dude. like with my son, he's activated and triggered by a lot more than he ever has been. Now, I'm going to admit, since being on the land we're on, he's had issues, but it's like night and day. Nothing nearly as severe and as often and as long in duration as what he had been experienced the moment we landed our feet in Compton, California. But they are still actively, I know who all the agents are. I know who they are on this property, and I sense and smell them when I'm out and about. It's not hard anymore. I don't even look. I'm not looking. I just have awareness. Once upon a time, it was looking. Now I'm not. Because now I don't care. This is something, once I realized that this was something that has been going on long before I knew. When I originally left Nevada, because that's where we are. This is where the major betrayals amplified, and I had to revisit and deal with all of that in my energy. Because this is where it happened. This is where it happened big. So this was about wasting my time. As usual, it was about having me to go in some kind of circles, wasting time, winding down time while I figure out what's going to be next for me and my son. Now, here's the thing. If me and my son are walking with suitcases, I still have more class than them with their flashy cars, their air-conditioned cars, their Teslas, their Escalades, their limos, their helicopters, their junkie witches, warlocks, and wizards that are on the property. But this whole narrative of people wanting to sit up pretentious and pompous and talk about the mental health needles, get a little bit more depth and education beyond what they've already spoon-fed you. People are being driven crazy by a system that pretends to care. By incompetent people, lazy people, people that are operating in nepotism, favoritism, some kind of ism, agendas. Some folks aren't inherently nutso. Do I know what's going to happen next? I don't. But that's kind of been my story. They need loosh from me. What they want is the narrative that is being torn and ripped to shreds in the firmament of this state in my life. They need me to be a receiver. They need the trauma story. And this is what the sabotage is all about. Folks like us, I'm not the only one, we lose hope in humanity or in systems. And this has nothing to do with not mental health. It has to do with they trash. It's failing. It's biased. It's prejudice. It's Machiavellian and narcissistic. And that premise always needs somebody to be the brunt. It needs somebody to be the sufferer. That's the mentality. That is the mindset. That is the foundation of a parasitic frequency, a parasitic system, a parasitic being, person, place, or thing. For them to be successful, then they have to, survival of the fittest. They have to destroy and sacrifice lives that they feel like they're qualified to determine is worth being sacrificed. But I'm here to say, mistake of their lives. We seek assistance and help, but that's a lot different than begging or bowing. We seek. We were being sabotaged. They intentionally, where we were, they intentionally ignored, they intentionally drug their asses, they intentionally, somebody's gonna say, you don't know their intention. Fair enough. I'll play that game. I'm gonna still stick to the facts. For whatever reason, for those of you who still want to believe the lies, that still is not a good enough one. That's not something you can do. People that operate these businesses know how important paperwork is because that's their favorite thing to do. It's their favorite pastime. They know how important for paperwork to be done and submitted and filled out with any kind of thing. That's even just including a job. If you're applying for jobs, you can't just be like, oh, they're trying to cover, for those of you who know that what's really up here, they're trying to cover what they've done to me and my son. What they've stolen, all the folks that's involved with that. And this is a part of it, sabotaging and creating an appearance like I can't stabilize. No, I can stabilize. I've stabilized several times. It wasn't emotional. This, when I left, it wasn't an emotional leave. It wasn't like that. It was calculated. I'd already started thinking and planning because I can already see with every communication, with every bullshit response, lack of response, all of the different things that they had persistently done in that time frame. The faces they made at each other, thinking I didn't see them, make certain little looks and faces and all that stuff. It's unprofessional. And these are all people that I was watching my social media because the people that recommended me to go there know full well. So they're all watching. And I need to say, and I'm going to say, for the bigwigs who like to sit in corporate offices, fancy window glass, who like to have Zoom meetings and sit up and talk about how they so wonderful and how they really want to serve the community. It might help to talk to a non-token person that's going to give it to you raw. Not everybody is just overburdened by life and simply can't handle life, and that's why they are having homelessness. Some people have been chronically abused by a system who is incompetent. The end.